Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, or whenever you're watching this episode. Welcome to this week's episode of Expert Interview Show. This is season 6. Let me tell you a little bit about our show, and before I talk about your guest. This episode today, we are going to talk about podcasts, how you can increase your credibility as an entrepreneur or as a coach, consultant, or a speaker by having a podcast. If that resonates with you, please do stick around and give us your comments as well. So, about this show, the Expert Interview Show started in 2018, and since then, I've been bringing you insights and strategies from successful entrepreneurs and industry experts to help you achieve success sooner. In these fun and engaging interviews, we've covered wide range of topics such as marketing, sales, mindset, personal development, and much more. Now, a request. Remember to subscribe, follow, like, and comment our episodes so we can reach even more entrepreneurs like you. As I said, today we are thrilled to have our expert who has helped numerous entrepreneurs establish themselves as thought leaders in their respective fields by creating their own podcasts. Today, she's going to share her story on how she started out and how she's helping others as well in the process. With years of experience and deep understanding of power of podcasting, our guest has helped entrepreneurs increase their credibility, gain more clients, and also make a lasting impact. On her global podcast, Focus on Why, Amy speaks with people of all walks of life, providing uplifting and relatable conversations designed to inspire you to take action. So don't forget, please go and subscribe to our podcast and listen to her episodes as well. Amy is Oh, I forgot to tell her surname, right? Amy Rowlinson. She shines the light on purpose, fulfillment, and curiosity to empower others to forge their own path. So, without any further ado, let's welcome our expert, Amy to the show. If I could pronounce your name, that would be great, Amy. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing your time today with us.
It's an absolute pleasure, and don't worry, it was a lot easier with my maiden name before I got my surname of Rowlinson, so but all good.
Oh, thank you. So tell us a little bit about what I have not already told everyone about you. And then we'll start with where did you start and how did you start?
Well, if you'd asked me this question a couple of days ago, I would have answered with a very different answer. I would have said I started my first show in 2019, and that was a practical property investing podcast. And then at the beginning of lockdown, I that business closed down and my business partner didn't want to continue with it, and so the podcast ended. It's still live. You can still listen to the Property Vault podcast. It's still doing really well in the charts. But then I decided to do it my second podcast and take my way of connecting with an audience into a different direction and talk about life purpose. And that's how Focus on Why started. However, I discovered that actually my podcasting journey started in 1990 when I was just 15.
Ooh.
I found yesterday a recording of myself and my grandfather where I interviewed him, and
Oh,
it's so strange because I am currently writing a book about his experiences as a prisoner of war and life purpose, and I was thinking I wish I'd been able to ask him some questions. Well, I literally found an old dictaphone cassette yesterday and played it, and tears came to my eyes because I've
oh.
asked him the questions that I wish I had 33 years ago. How weird is that?
Yeah, it is. It's sometimes things do happen. We don't realize that. We stop it and then you think, oh, how did it come? It's all new. No, it's not. It's been there in within us, and all it needed is a trigger.
I know.
And that
Honestly,
boom.
And it was his birthday yesterday, so there was some kind of
Is he still around,
no,
or
he died in
he's passed away?
1996.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm really sorry to hear, but he would be very
Thank
proud that you found
Yes,
it, and and he could share his voice.
but
Um,
slight tangent there, but it felt that this is the thing about podcasting, is that it is such a powerful medium, and there is a connection there like no other with your interviews, with your guests, with the people that come on the show.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. I've got a podcast story as well, but that story is not as uh, inspiring. I would say maybe it'll be in 2 months' time, but or in few years' time. Let's say I wanted to start a podcast. I started. That was in 2015, late 2015, 2016. But life has its own way of doing things, right? So I had some personal challenges, so I didn't even continue. 2018, it came about in a week. Someone said, "Oh, you need to start something," and I was listening to a guest in another Facebook group, and she said, "If you start one with a seasonal one, it would be a lot easier for you to kickstart it, and then you've got a break." And I said, "That sounds like a good idea. Let me start." It all started out in 10 days back in 2018 as a video podcast. It was alive then. Now I'm recording and um, uploading, but whereas then it was all live. So it was very interesting. On my birthday, July 26th, that's when the first episode of this show started. Anyway, so why should anyone have a podcast or a video cast or anything to go around it? So why do you think it is important? How did it make a change in your life?
Yeah, lots of great questions there. So let's start with what happened with my podcast, and I can illustrate the reasons why you would want to start one with your own one.
Yeah.
And so Focus on Why grew from a single seed. It was an idea that I woke up with, knowing that I wanted to continue with the medium of podcasting and use it some way in my business. I didn't know how, I didn't know what, but I just knew that I had to do it. And so I grew that show organically without a single paid or boosted ad. It literally, I had the idea on the 1st of April.
Amy, I've got to stop you there. Can you go back, because you were frozen for few minutes there.
Okay, where do
I
you want me
lost
to go
you.
back to?
Yeah, where how you started.
Okay, so to help illustrate the questions that you asked, Sudha, I just want to share how Focus on Why started.
Mhm.
I woke up with the idea on the 1st of April, and by the 30th of April, I had already recorded 30 episodes. Now, you
Ooh.
said that you launched your
As
show
in
within
30.
30, yeah, 30.
Ooh.
And so I knew very quickly that I had an idea, and just how you said you launched it within 10 days, I had launched the show within a month. And
But
what
you
I
had
wanted
more episodes. I didn't even have one episode to start.
but I think what's important here is it wasn't an overnight success. I was using transferable skills from previous podcast knowledge. I'd learned from mistakes and various things. But the morning I woke up with that idea, I knew that I had just had to do it. I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know exactly how or what, but I just knew that this had to grow from this seed.
Mm.
And it was really interesting because what I then did was I spoke from the heart. I knew that there's this reason for why I was doing it was important, and that it was going to help so many people. And also, it was April 2020. There were a lot of people out there who were going through uncertain times, and to focus on your why just felt like a really important message at that point in time. And yet now I realize 3 years down the road, it's a message that starts all the time. It's so important to focus on the why. So what I did was I had that idea and I took it and I went with it. And I realized that, yes, I'd recorded so many episodes, so I couldn't delay them. I had to release them. So I released quite a few early on, and it
Mm.
grew. It really grew. It's now 335 episodes later, 3 years, 126 countries it's downloaded, and not a single paid ad or boosted ad. It's been word of mouth recommendations. People
Mm.
have posted online and said what value they've got out of listening to the episodes. So what I did was tap into a really important part of who we are and how it can serve people. Now, I'm a life purpose coach. So, what I'm doing is I'm talking about a topic that is at the heart of my business
Yeah.
and using a medium such as podcasting to convey that message to the audience. I
Mm.
connect with people. Now, what then happens is that many conversations then ensue. So obviously I'm recording an episode, either it's a solo episode, it's just me, or with a guest. That is a closed environment. So people then contact me and I have lots of offline conversations. And I knew very quickly when I had launched that show that it was going to be something special, because I got a message from a nurse in Amsterdam who had said that she'd listened to my episode and she absolutely loved it. She said she described it as the water to a seed she'd planted that was desperate to grow, but was still finding its roots. And she then used that podcast to think about how she could improve and explore her work as a nurse and teach and guide her students and think about what new roads to explore herself. And she found it really inspiring. So I knew I was onto something good here. I knew that I could just keep going, and I have kept going. And you spoke about doing in series. I have been episodic, so I have released an episode, and it used to be 3 one week for the following. I then dropped it down to 2, and now I'm down to 1 a week with so there's literally 5 episodes, and then I do my own reflections episode. It's called Reflections with Actions Afterwards. So how do you as a listener know that it's right for your business? And it's about thinking about the audience. Who is there? Who are you trying to serve through your business? And how is a podcast going to help you to connect with your potential clients? What is it that they are going to hear that you share? And is it a case that you even have to have your own podcast? Could you just be a serial guest? Because that is a great way of connecting to your audience, but without having the responsibility of having your own show. But then if you do have your own show, and even as a guest, it's about standing out. It's about connecting with the people that you want to speak to. So podcasting is a very personal space. It really is a way of getting into the ears of your ideal client and speaking to them. Now, I know we're doing a video here, and for those who are listening through the video, that is a different medium in itself. I
Mm.
stay purely with audio because I describe it as being the soundtrack to people's movies that they're playing. So they're
Mm.
thinking about their world, and then they're listening to what I have to say and thinking, I can apply that into my
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, that's very interesting way to put it. But sometimes I think I listen to more podcasts than watching, even if I'm watching any of the video casts. I mostly do it in the background. I listen unless or otherwise I had to look. If it's a show and tell, maybe that would be the video. So as you said, off air, we were discussing about how you help or how you got clients. When I asked you about monetization, you said, "Yeah, I do get clients." So, what is the difference when you have a podcast? This is my dilemma, right? When you have got a video cast or anything, I don't highlight my achievements or anything in my video cast. I always ask um, my guests to highlight theirs and help others, how they help others, how they can be in touch with some of my audience. So what is the difference? What is the right way to do it? Like if you have a show, you're a host, is it okay for you to highlight it? Or this is my confusion.
No, it's a really, really valid question. So the because of my show being an interview podcast, You're absolutely right. I actually step into the background. I shine the light on other people and
Yeah.
talk about their purpose and what they're doing and who they are. And a lot of people would say, well, why are you doing it that way? It's your show. That is who I am. That
Mm.
is the way I work. I'm a life purpose coach. The majority of the sessions I do with my life purpose coaching, I ask questions, and then it's for my clients to work out their own answers. They're the ones who are the stars. And so I don't have much airtime on my own show, which is why I
Okay.
have that Reflections with Actions episode after every
Um,
5 interviews. And that's me speaking as a solo person on my own. And I'm reflecting on what's just been shared in the last 5 interviews. And I pull on different strands. I put on something that I would like to talk about from my perspective. And in that way, I get to share with the audience what I feel without being the star of the show in my interviews.
ooh.
I allow them to have their space, and then I have my own separate space, and that really works.
That's I'm gonna pitch that one from you. I only do solo episodes when I don't have guests. I don't book it in as part of the show. I think I should do that one. That's very interesting way to put it. I've never thought about it in that way. Oh, that's good. I do talk about in. I did one solo episode on this season because I mucked up with the guest. Got the time at 10 o'clock in the evening. I was like, who comes 10 o'clock in the evening? Anyway, that's what I did. Oh, that's very good strategy to use in your own show to highlight and reflect upon. Oh, thank you very much for that tip. And next question I have is when you said you had 30 episodes, that seemed for a person, because you had a background of already having a show, because you had to get off because of the partner and not wanting to do, or he or she may have had other commitments. How it is a little bit daunting task, isn't it, to have a 30 episode recorded. That means I need to find the topic, I need to find the guest, I need to find the recording time, and then I need to clean up the audio if I need to clean up the audio. And then I have got to think about registering on these podcast platforms, and then uploading it in the for the approval and all of that. Uh, Break it into a smaller chunks so that we
Yeah.
can digest it like quicker, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so that would sound overwhelming. I get where you're coming from. To launch a podcast, I recommend that you only need 3 episodes, but to
Okay.
have some in the bank so that you know that you're going to be able to meet that consistency of producing a show regularly. Now,
Mm.
yes, granted, 30 was loads. What happened was I reached out to a few people to say, I'm doing this new show, would you be interested? And no one said no. So very quickly, I had a bank of people. I had a spreadsheet full of people. And here I am 3 years later, still with a 6-month booked out waiting list of people wanting to come on
Oh,
the show. So
oh, you're
I'm not short of guests. And that has never been a problem because the topic is so interesting and it just brings forth so many different opportunities. And as I said, I get word of mouth recommendations from people who come on the show saying that was one of the best experiences I've been on. And being a guest, would you be interested in having this guest? And so I constantly get people recommended. So, and I'm also being pitched all the time. So I don't have to worry about that. But if you are starting out with your own show, to launch properly, I would recommend that you need at least 3 episodes and your trailer to do a great launch. And that's to really make people aware of what it is that you're trying to achieve, and then they can see, okay, yes, I get the gist of what the show's like, I'd like to follow this show, and they subscribe, and then they're interested in what you're doing. So from the perspective of getting started, yes, there's a process, and that's where, yes, I am a life purpose coach, but I'm also a podcast strategist, and I help people to launch their own shows. And I do that in 2 ways. I do that either one-to-one, or I do it in a group environment. And I have 6 people at any time in what I call a launch pod. And
okay.
it's small, it's contained, and it's very personal, because it is really important to launch a show that is congruent to you and your business and your purpose. So to ensure that you're going to not suffer from pod fade, which exists when people do get overwhelmed and realize that there's a huge commitment here and think, oh, actually, you know what, it's just not for me. So I help people to start their show and avoid that, so that they're going to be consistent. And if that means that they put out an episode every fortnight instead of weekly, then that suits them. Some people want to do daily shows. It really depends on what is relevant to the audience of that person, because it's about what their audience has got the time to consume and what the knowledge is, or the information, or the education, or the entertainment. It depends on how you're connecting with your listener, what it is they're getting out of the show for the reasons why they would be listening.
Oh, that's very interesting, because I have this challenge of number one, it's not that I'm not consistent. I've got problem with doing something day in and day out. It feels like monotonous for me. Like I'm doing the same thing again and again, even though it is interesting in a way. So that kind of puts me off. Sometimes I sit back and it's like, I've got to record another episode again. And I don't want to get into that stage. I am one of those people who are passionate about wanting to help others. But this is really one of the things which puts me off, or which may have put me off in the past. So how do you help? You said you're two ways in helping your clients or wannabe podcasters. You said one-to-one and group. You've got very small numbers, so you can pay attention to each and every one of them. So do they come to you with an idea that they've got for the podcast, and you say, yeah, it can become a good podcast? Do you help them with the title of the podcast? Do you help them with where they can post this? How do you help them? What are the strategy bit and what are the technical bit everyone should be aware of before?
Well, it would probably wouldn't surprise you to know that someone who speaks about purpose and the why, that's where we start. And we talk about the purpose of the podcast. Why do you want to launch it? Why podcasting specifically over other ways of connecting with your audience? And really identifying whether it's business related or whether it's a passion project, whether it's for entertainment purposes or it's educational. What is the actual purpose of the podcast? And then, as you asked the question earlier, we didn't get to answer it properly, but the benefits. What are the benefits for you, for your brand, for your business and your business brand? And understanding really what it is that you want to achieve, and what is your show about, what isn't your show about, what do you want people to say about your show? And then we can move on to the other elements once the purpose piece is the first piece of the jigsaw. And talking about the benefits from a personal perspective and also from a business perspective, very different. And would you like me to dive into what I've
Please, yeah, please do. Because yes, there are many life coaches, but I also want a person who is business oriented to come on and do a podcast as well.
So from the perspective personally, it's given me a real clarity of message, and it's improved my listening and questioning skills, which ripple effects go into my business side. Of course, I've become a better communicator. I have created many opportunities. I've made huge friends from at this, and it has been an absolute blast. It's been so much fun, and it's boosted my confidence. So all of that has then translated into how I perform from a business perspective. It's increased my visibility, and I'm known. A lot of people talk about my podcast and know about Focus on Why, and I have a good presence across different platforms. So it's been a really good marketing tool for people to understand who I am and what I do. And I walk the walk and I also talk the talk, right? It's built credibility. So I get trust and loyalty. And because I am there and I'm consistent, people see that week in. And that says a lot about a person, is to see that consistency coming through from delivering, because it is time consuming, but I absolutely love it. So it works for me. And I have become an authority person in my topic, in my area of speciality, which is to talk about purpose and why we have purpose in life, why people look to to build a business around purpose. And so what it also does is it gives me that becomes a key person of influence. And so people are willing to come onto a podcast. It's quite a revered status. People see it as something that they would affiliate themselves with. And so I am able to ask quite high profile people to come on the show, and they say yes, because it's not just like doing a Facebook Live, and I wouldn't necessarily be able to ask them onto a physical stage without having to pay them thousands of pounds to do so. But a podcast, people say yes because they see the value in the shelf life of a podcast. It's there for a good 5 to 7 years or even longer, and they see the value. They see what they're going to get in return because they see that you've got a good audience size, that you've got a good demonstration of being proficient in your skill as an interviewer, and that is something that is important to allow your guests to shine and have that great space. And of course, from the monetization perspective, this is the key element. Now, I don't have an external sponsor. I don't have people advertise on my show. I have partnered with charity. So I have partnered with Parkinson's UK. They asked me to support them with a particular campaign, and I did. But what I do is I weave in the work that I'm offering. So I ask people, I talk about how I could help them from a life purpose perspective, and also from podcast mentoring. So I use my own show to advertise my own services. So I then get people come to me who have listened to many of my episodes, very warm. They feel they know me. And in fact, people will just say, how do I sign up? I'm ready to pay. And I've never met them or heard from them before, and they want to come straight in. So from that perspective, it is time consuming. But I know that once I release an episode, it's out there. That's a marketing piece that's there for so many years going forward. So that's a great return on my time from a perspective.
Yeah, I completely understand. This is one thing which I am trying to understand is would some people say, mind you, since I've been on live, doing live Facebook lives and stuff like that, I pick up a self challenge and start doing it. I got more visible there. So what is, you did mention it before, video or audio, it doesn't matter, it raises your profile anyway. But what is, if you have to say the difference or the benefit of audio podcast to video podcast, what would you say that as?
So it really comes down to, again, your audience and what their preferences are. So
initially we won't have audience. This is where we are struggling. I think when a podcaster or when a wannabe podcaster comes on, initially they don't have an audience. They've got to define the audience in a hypothetical way. Okay, these are the audience who may watch,
and
but
then
they cannot vouch for it.
Yeah. So that comes down to your personal preference. So my personal preference was just to stick with the audio perspective. I didn't have the time, the capacity, or the funds to do the type of editing that would be required to do a really polished video. So I stuck with one medium, and that's what I'm known for now. And it's a lot easier to do editing, to clean up the audio, than it is to put together a really well done video. Now, the difference also, though, is that your eyes are very forgiving. So if you are recording video and there are extraneous sounds or whatever, you see them. So you forgive them. With the audio, you have to be really careful that if they're just listening, any extra sounds in the room or any external noises or speech fillers, they can be really distracting for the listener. So it's very important for me to get a well put together piece of audio that I know people will enjoy.
So on that, now that we've come to conclusion of like, audio or video. So what are the things a person, you said 3 videos may be enough. How do they go about, like before they come to you? How do they prepare themselves before they come to you and say, hey, I've got 3 videos or 3 audios which I can. how long do you think an episode should be?
So again, somebody who would come to me likely hasn't recorded at that point.
Okay.
They're still in the early stages, but if they have, and actually also I have people who've come to me who've already got an existing show, and then they say it's not quite working for whatever reasons, help me from that perspective. Again, the length of time is determined by who is listening. Now I know, let's imagine that you know your ideal listener in terms of your business, because you would have an avatar of somebody who is going to be working
Mhm.
or buying your services or your products. So from that perspective, you need to know where they're listening, when they're listening, how they're listening, and then that would also then determine the length of what you're going to be recording. So I know that the people who listen to my show are people who would be walking outside, walking their dog, or they would be listening to it whilst at the gym or driving and commuting. And I've kind of got the ideal time wise of between 30 and 40 minutes. And
Oh,
that seems to be the length of time that people in my audience say is perfect. Anything over that, too long.
okay. That's because the story could be like 10 minutes and then their experiences and then how they come to. So that kind of works out with the storyline, isn't it? For an episode of how it goes. So, if do you only help the potential clients if they come from this type of more personal development aspect, or do you help with podcasters who have got more technical based
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
scientific? Okay.
A real variety. So the actual content of what the podcast is about is irrelevant from my perspective to help them. I don't need to be the expert. They're the expert in that space, so that's
Yeah.
fine. But the actual mechanics about how to put together the podcast, they would remain the same from the structure perspective. So I would talk about the purpose, the audience, the concept, and then we talk about the strategy. And then we would look at the areas of expertise, what's involved, what technology they need, what particular pieces of equipment they need. And then we would look at the time that's involved and whether it is effective for the individual to be doing it or whether they could outsource elements. Pretty
Mhm.
much everything from a podcast perspective is able to be outsourced other than the actual interviewing. It actually, even that could be outsourced if it's not you who's going to be the expert in that space. But if you are, then it's your time. So every other element of time that's involved, all the way through from the preparation of getting a guest on, sending them out the required documents and the requests and the forms that they would need to do, preparing the various elements for the actual recording, and then post recording, the editing and the show notes writing, the assets that you put together to support that podcast, which could be for marketing purposes, the repurposing of various elements. So you could repurpose what you've done into blogs and everything. All of that can be outsourced. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's a time element. But with that, if you think about that, that's the cost. What's it going to cost you to outsource that? But you have to weigh that up with what is your time worth versus other people who will be doing those various elements for you. So you can keep the costs low, and low for yourself on a budget is possible. You can, all you need would be a microphone and a computer, and you can use free software. I recommend that you use a paid platform. I use Libsyn. But if you are on a tight budget, podcasting, it has got a relatively low barrier entry to get
Mm.
involved, to get started. And then all you would pay for would be the distribution platform on a monthly basis. You could do everything else yourself. But if you are thinking about what that costs and your hourly involvement, I would say every episode that I put out there, which is 35 minutes, has got at least 5 hours of work attached to it.
Okay. So you mean 5 hours for each episode? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so that's in the preparation, the correspondence, the editing, the recording, the editing, and then the putting together the marketing assets, and then sharing that on social media.
Okay. So you also mentioned, thank you very much. I was going to ask you about that. 5 hours seem to be relatively okay for a week, or if it's a weekly episode. If it's a daily, I don't know who will do it,
Well,
but
it wouldn't be as long as that, because you probably wouldn't put together a show as long as that. If it's daily, it could be 15, 20 minutes. So you're cutting out some of the time of editing and various things. And also, if you just post it raw,
yeah.
so without tidying it up too much, then that reduces the time that you're spending on the editing section.
Yeah, but that will also affect what type of audience, what is the retention of the audience on your episodes as well, isn't it? If you're doing something, it's better to do the right way, not too perfect, at least decent enough for other people to listen to. So how this is going to be you've got to go back now and think of how long did it take for you as a beginner who didn't have that much of knowledge of what it is. Now it would be a lot easier, but in the beginning you might not have that insight. How should I produce an episode? How do I find? So what do you think it took you then?
So when I first started my first podcast, I hadn't even listened to a podcast. I wasn't a podcast listener. I had my business partner who had listened to podcasts. He also had a friend who produced podcasts. So we had some help from that perspective. But I came into it fairly green, to be fair. I was pretty sort of new to the whole platform. And I just sat there, and the first few episodes, maybe they weren't as great as the others. But as you said, it's just about getting started. It's just getting recording. Knowing your subject is important, knowing what it is you're talking about, and planning out your episode beforehand. Now, that doesn't mean writing an entire script. It just means, like, what is it you're going to be talking about? Why is that of relevance to your audience? How can they apply that? What if they don't apply it? And then wrapping it up into, here is my call to action. And that's quite a basic script just to get started. And once you get started, you can then sort of improve. And actually, your listeners will come on that journey with you. Being honest about your starting out, getting started, people like that. They like to be part of your journey as much as you are on it.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you very much for that, because that gives me some kind of outlook of yeah, I can do it, because that confidence. I think that's one thing, apart from life taking over. That was another thing which I struggled. I planned to nth degree of having my trailer, having my artwork, having the everything else worked out. It was like, oh, that didn't, and then life threw a curveball. That's so you can start it no matter what when if you can even start it with 10 minutes from what you've suggested just now. It doesn't have to be 30 to 40 minutes episode to start with. You can start it with 10 minutes and see how you adjust to the process of producing an episode and uploading it. And there, when you mentioned just a few minutes ago, you mentioned that you would advise to be on paid platform. Now YouTube has got the podcast element to it, where it doesn't cost you anything. You don't need Libsyn for uploading. So what does your opinion on that aspect? As you said, yeah, there are other free
Yeah,
platforms.
there
But
are a
what
lot.
is your opinion about YouTube's podcast series?
There are lots of ways that you can do that. And absolutely, you can just post it on to YouTube. If you want to get onto all of the other platforms, and there are so many different ways that people access podcasts, they all have so many different apps. The
Yes.
majority of people use Apple or Spotify, but there are lots of other ones.
Yeah, Google
I just feel that if you use the platform such as Libsyn, which is where you upload your artwork, your show notes, you have that then distributed across to every single way that people access it. You're exposing yourself for a small amount of money to all of the possibilities of how people can access your information. Now, what's interesting is with a platform such as Apple or Spotify, when you subscribe to a particular show, you then get 100% of the content. Now,
Mm.
other platforms, social media platforms, that you don't necessarily see all of it. So yes, you could do that through YouTube, and that is a possibility. I have all my podcasts on YouTube. I know they're just audio; they're not a visual, but still people subscribe. Not very many, but there are a handful compared to the other platforms.
Yeah.
But if you do a live on Facebook or Instagram, not everybody in your following will see that content because of the way that it's limited to a small percentage. But with a platform such as Apple, once someone's subscribed, they see every single episode. It's there, it's all accessible. So that's a great way to know that you are reaching your desired audience.
Oh, that's brilliant. So now I'm going to go for more technical question of as person has come to you, like me, I want to do a podcast on artificial intelligence, how it can help business owners. That's one of the things which I had in, because that 2016, late 2015, 2016, that's when I started working with chatbots. So that was the topic. I wanted to talk about the marketing and how AI can help and all of that. So how do I go and research? How do you need to do a research of whether the subject matter you are going to talk about has got audience, or can you just play it blind and say, I love this, I'm going to put content on this and pray that people will download my episodes? How do you approach this?
So
I keep telling I need to go and research. This is my analysis paralysis coming from my occupational hazard of like, I need to find out whether there is audience to my topic. So how do you do that? Do you encourage doing it, or do you just want to?
I would highly recommend that you go and do some research before you invest time, money, and energy into any kind of podcasting. There is a great source, and it's a search engine for podcasts called listennotes.com.
Okay.
If you go on there, you can type in any of your search words, and it will not only show podcasts that talk about that topic, but all of the episodes that have covered that particular topic across all the podcasts. So then you would be able to go in and find other podcasts in your niche, in your space. You would be able to see who is hosting current shows or who is guested on those shows. You would then start to put together quite a lot of resources for your area of speciality. There are 19 categories in Apple, and in those there are subcategories. So you can actually niche down quite detailed into, for example, if you went into technology, you would then be able to go into subcategories, and you'd be able to look at who else has got shows in there, look at the shows, look at the reviews that people have left on those shows, and then you start to understand what it is people value about that particular topic, and you'll see what it is that they've left as a review, and you'll be okay, so not only do they value this topic, but they value this particular person who's come on and what they shared. So you get a really detailed background into who's listening, what they love, and why they're listening.
Oh, that's interesting. So I didn't know, but listen as in LISTEN notes.com. That's where you can do the research of podcast. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know. I've learned something. I've learned many things in the last 40 minutes or so. So and on that note, the second question I have is, you mentioned once you put it through the paid service like Libsyn, or there may be others as well, so which I've not got the knowledge of, but how, do you go and select how many platforms it goes, or do you not do that?
You can make selections and deselect. You can choose. There are several different ways that you can do that, but it will essentially just tick all of them, and then you can deselect some others if you don't want them to go there. But why would you limit your audience? And there are lots of different sort of toggles that you can put on the system there. So I just select all of them. It goes out to all of them. I also have a feed. The RSS feed goes straight into my own website. So every time I launch an episode, it automatically feeds onto my website as well, because that's the one thing. If you've got someone in your audience who's not listening to a podcast and they don't understand how to access a podcast, everybody knows how to access a website URL.
Yeah, interesting. That's good. Thank you. Another thing is more motivational side of it. Like some may think I have got problem hang up with my voice. I don't have a voice for podcast or for the radio for that matter, because I've never done it. I just do the talk. That's about it. So there is no pitch going up and down, and these are the things which I had as a person who wants to venture on podcast. Because video is more forgiving, because it sees your face and kind of gets what you're coming at, as you said. Whereas audio, you don't have a facial expression to go with it, so it's all your voice, so that carries. So how do you tell a person who has got this hang up that their voice is not, you listening to you, it's so musical, your voices, it's just it goes up and down, and I can be sometimes tone deaf to my own thing. But I listen to other people and say, oh, they've got beautiful voice that carries, and that makes people to be invited into their space. So how can a person who has got this hang up overcome that? What would you suggest? Did you have this before? I sometimes think everyone has got that. It's not you. But sometimes when I listen to people, I think, no, they are born good orators.
Well, firstly, you are the first person to describe me as musical. I am definitely not someone who is ever encouraged to continue singing. so thank you.
You have to be a singer.
No, not at all. Not at all. I would just say it's practice. It's definitely practice. When I first started recording, as many people do, they hate the sound of their own voice because it doesn't sound the same when you hear it from an outside perspective as you hear it from inside your head. In terms of worrying about what you're saying and how you're saying it, again, it is practicing. It is with everything. You wouldn't just suddenly stand on a stage and start speaking having never done any preparation. I have also been working alongside my podcasting as a professional speaker. I've just literally hung up my boots as being past president for the regional area of the Southeast region of the Professional Speaking Association. So I've been learning the craft of speaking alongside actually working as a podcaster. So I'm a life purpose coach, as I said. Coaching skills, listening skills, speaking skills, they are all, you're able to learn those and improve on that.
Yeah, so you said professional, or you need to have, and what I loved about you is I've interviewed quite a few people, and I've been a professional speaker for quite a while as well. But the thing is, you have that. I've been a area director for Toastmasters as well. So you don't have those long pauses, the very uncomfortable ones where you think, okay, is this person going to die now, or are they going to wake up? And then there is ums and ahs, and all of those things go in that as well. That's why I brand my show as a talk show, because I do have that hang-ups of like stutters here and there. And so how do you think they can practice? You said practice makes it better. How can they practice their voice? Do you take any voice classes with these voice coaches, or how can one do that?
Again, when you're in normal conversation, just during the day with friends, family, peers at work, whatever it may be, take the moment to hear what you're saying and you can correct those speech fillers, the ums, the ers, the you knows. You can start to remove them from your casual conversation, so that when you come into a time like this where we're recording again, they've been removed, and it will just improve. And it is something that's happened over time. I was very conscious that when I was being edited for my podcast, it was my husband does the editing for me, and he was like, oh yeah, a lot of ums and ahs in that one. And I've consciously over the last 3 years really worked at removing them, and now
Yeah.
I don't have them. And when I listened back to that episode where I spoke earlier in 1990, I had that lovely, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to ask moment from my grandfather. And also, and I did have ums. So I know that they were there because I hear them, they were there, but I have worked over the time to do that. And in terms of being a great guest, and as you said, you know, are they actually able to answer the question I've just asked them again? It's about preparing. It's about understanding, having a pre-call with the host, understanding what it is that the host wants to get out of the conversation, and being professional about it. So yes, it's going to be unscripted. I don't know what the questions are that you're going to ask me exactly, but you know roughly what it is that you're going to be talking about. You know what the audience wants to hear, and you put that together. So it is really preparation, but not over preparation in that it's just you might as well have just sent me the questions, I recorded it and send them back to you. That doesn't work.
I don't want, yeah, which I don't want. I want it to be more talk based. Again, I hear all these celebrity coaches or celebrities themselves come up with so many ums and ahs, and I like, no, I don't want to listen to this, because I always passively listen to these episodes rather than actively undersell otherwise show and tell. Anyway, so if someone has to, now you've convinced them and they want to start the podcast, how can they reach out to you? I will put all your links in the description below, but give us a short answer on how they can reach you.
Just go to my website, amyrowlinson.com. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Before I let you go, I've got 3 fun questions. It's nothing serious. So, what would Amy do if at 2 o'clock in the night there is a fire alarm and you've got to take only 3 things, not your husband or your partner, 3 things to take it and run out? What would that be?
Oh, so it would be the book that I have next to me, probably, because it would be something of value. I would take my laptop, and I would take any photo albums that I have, and my dog.
Oh, that's, yeah, dog is important. You can shout her, just run out. I am going.
Yeah.
Anyway, the second question is, are you a tea or a coffee person?
I am a tea person, and that is also a herbal tea. I drink lemongrass and ginger.
Oh, that's good. Tea person. That's nice. I am both, by the way. And the third question is, you're going on a vacation. Which one would you choose? A countryside or a city? Boundaries
Countryside.
all shows. Countryside. Beautiful. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time, and thanks for very accommodating when I rushed you here and there. And thank you. And I'll speak to you soon about setting up my own podcast.
Perfect. I look forward to it. Thank you.
So, and now, okay. Last question. I should not have stopped you like that. Last question. So you said anyone who you are helping people on one-to-one and also group. When is your group starting? When is your group starting?
So I've just finished one cohort, so it'll be a case of probably after the summer. So we're looking probably around about September. But what I tend to do is I wait for people to come to me and say, are you putting one on? And then I'll put together a cohort.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. I just wanted to confirm that one. So I am not misleading people if they are coming from now to Oh, I took you off. From now to future, like whenever you're starting, they should be
Yeah.
doing it one to one. Okay,
I te-
brilliant. Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all. That's all for today's episode on our expert interview show. We hope you enjoyed the insights and strategies shared by our amazing guest, Amy Rowlinson. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing her surname right. Again, please remember to subscribe, follow, like, and comment on our episodes so you can stay updated on our episodes. Also, you can help us reach more entrepreneurs just like you. Join our community of like-minded individuals. So ping me a message. And thanks for tuning in. And we will see you in our next episode. Until then, be intentionally happy, be strategically growing, and help anyone you can, because you may be the only one lending the hand. Thank you very much, and bye for now.